Hello, hello, hello. So this is Lee from the newbeatmaker.com, influencepodcast.co.uk, and quick reminder, Objects in Orbit is the name of the artist, Panoramas is the amazing album, objectsinorbit.bandcamp.com is where you will hear it. Objects was gracious enough to spend some time chopping it up with me very recently. I asked him some quick questions about the project.
Hey, this is Objects in Orbit. Thanks for having me on here.
Objects in Orbit, thank you so much for taking the time out. You are a multimedia artist and visual arts have always been super important to you. I follow yourself on Instagram, especially because you are such a multimedia artist and your visuals are so cool. When I follow someone on Instagram, I tend to scroll down to their very first post. I don't know why I do that. Maybe it's because I like to see where their journey has taken them in the time before I got to follow them. Your first post on Instagram, July 8th, 2014. The date places your picture in between iGeneration. Fantastic project. I'm pretty sure I wrote about it for bboytechreport.com. Shout out to them, as well as my own, thenewbeatmaker.com, and the fantastic Right Now single. Post was taken out of time. You were in LA, if I remember correctly. I'm assuming this is a pic of LA. It's this beautiful sun-kissed desert, lots of very rich orangey colour and greeny browns, and this fantastic mountain range. Ignorance here. I'm reminded of the mountain in Close Encounters of the Third Kind that dude was making out of the mashed potato. So Objects in Orbit, can you tell me a little bit about the post?
Yeah, all right. So I went to explain that picture on my Instagram. That was taken in Tucumcari, New Mexico, on my way out to LA. During that road trip I took across the country to get out there. And that was on the border, Texas and New Mexico. And basically, I just remembered the name of that city from a movie, Few Dollars More. And saw the real place, and just that was the first picture I took of the desert. So that's where that is.
Very cool. I've never seen the film, but it is on my list. I promise. I know. I've just gone down in a few of my film buddies' estimations. I'm sure. Please don't hate me, folks. Again, congratulations on the release of this fantastic project. You're a multimedia artist who has always been very enthusiastic in celebrating the work of other artists from a diverse array of creative media. Who and what would you say were your main influences or inspirations or the rationale behind Panoramas?
I guess before I really jump in and answer your question, first off, huge compliments, with the comparisons to Public Enemy and RJD2, Madlib, some of the other comparisons I've been hearing you make about this particular project. It's like, okay, like I never really saw myself in that type of company. So just, thank you. I mean, like huge compliments. It's pretty humbling. And as far as the project itself, it really just started as something I was going to do as part of an art installation. There was a neighbor of mine who worked as a painter and a visual artist, and he had thrown a gallery opening in our apartment, in our complex, like maybe a year and a half prior to us coming up with the idea of maybe doing it again, and that he would produce more of his art and have more of his paintings. And then the way my place was set up, I was going to lend him like what I had as for a PA system at the time, and really make an event out of the gallery opening. And I made 20 copies of the tape to kind of just sell there, and it was going to be something that I made specifically for this event. And I was just going to play it a couple times, sell some tapes, and that was going to be the end of it. So I didn't really have a big scope or any big ambitious type of ideas when I initially started with it. However, I did have the concept for this record. I always had the idea that I wanted to do something like an audio movie or a sonic movie or some type of narrative audio story for your ears. I guess something between like an album and an audiobook, which is interesting. I wonder if they set audiobooks to music. I don't have any audiobooks, but I wonder if that's something they do. maybe someone can explain that to me. But or I could just pick up an audiobook. But that was the idea, though. Kind of something like that, like an audiobook set to music, or just like this, really kind of odd Channel Zero type of program that's just like really like cable access 3 a.m. type of record. It's like, it is really really kind of the spirit behind it. But but still calling it panoramas and just kind of trying to cover a lot of ground and take a little look at everything. Trying to come up with the concept, and a lot of actual visual media was the main influence. Even trying to like put it together for like a visual gallery opening type of event. Visual art was just definitely the main influence behind what I definitely intended to be an audio piece. As far as films and documentaries, it was a big smattering of everything, and you hear it across the whole record. As far as just the general experience, it's just living by myself in Los Angeles, just kind of like working on my music and doing my thing, and just not necessarily having a large audience or like a huge presence, or not really trying to make music, I guess not trying to make it like the main thing in my life as far as a career is concerned. I mean, obviously I care about making music, but after a while I thought it was probably better to just approach it as a hobby and as something I like to do. So that's basically kind of where I was putting this one together too, was that I was having fun just making a project again and not really worrying about trying to capture an audience, because I think that's just a condition of being in LA, is that like if you're going to do music or movies or anything like that unless you capture an audience, that it's just not really a worthwhile endeavor. And so once I got away from that state of mind, that was a huge help with this project, and just kind of gave me the freedom to just be like, all right, like whatever comes to me that feels good or sounds dope, like that's just what I'm gonna run with. So that's, I'd say, a very concise story about how this whole project came together, because I could ramble on and on, but I'd rather people just kind of listen for themselves and come up with their own ideas, and kind of hear for themselves what they want to hear out of how everything's put together. I really enjoyed hearing your interpretation and just hearing the way people have like responded to it, and I've actually like really dug into it too, where people can like really recall specific moments where it's like, oh man, like what were you doing here? Where it's just like, oh, okay. Like, I also haven't gone back and listened to it just because it's like I kind of want to forget about it so I can focus on like what I'm trying to do now. Is like, I guess that's how I get when I work on stuff. It's like, I'm not going to really dwell on that project too much in order to kind of focus more on what I'm doing now, which is obviously like, doing the follow-up and, kind of doing part 2, because now that I've kind of run with this concept, it's, the idea now is to, kind of do it as like a 3-part series, kind of like, again, a trilogy, I guess a sci-fi trilogy, a la Star Wars. It's funny. I guess, yeah, because I guess you would call that an influence too, a very like quiet outside influence, like, so many themes of like space and fantasy and sci-fi that, yeah, no, of course, stuff like that is definitely going to leak through. Yeah, so that is in a very short retelling kind of the story of the album. But yeah, otherwise I just recommend that people listen to it. So yes, I'm going to shill it right now. Bandcamp.com, Objects in Orbit.
Yeah, looking forward to episode 2 and episode 3, as it were. Yeah, for sure. As a music writer and enthusiast, I find myself making comparisons between artists to be double-edged. My hope is that I quickly grab the attention of people with like-minded music tastes, artistic tastes, who may be drawn to an artist's work, in this case, in your work. My fear is that the artists themselves that are being compared to other artists may find my comparisons at best lazy and at worst insulting. So my question is, comparisons as shorthand, helpful, harmful, both, neither?
I think when you're trying to explain music to people, it's not like trying to explain a movie or a painting or something that you can see. We don't have the same language for sounds like we do for colors. So it's like, what does red sound like? And I know there have been scientists out there that are trying to actually like figure out the frequencies that go along with certain colors and certain visual cues. But you know what I'm talking about. Like, do you snap your fingers and is that red? Like, so to describe music to somebody, yeah, you have to give them a frame of reference based in something they know. Because if you're trying to explain something like music to somebody and, you're explaining artists or albums they don't know, that doesn't really give them the frame of reference or even the desire to kind of want to dive into it, because, obviously if it's like not in the wheelhouse of something that you already like, then, it's just a good chance you're not going to engage with it. So, no, the comparisons are definitely helpful. I guess the harmful part of it is just like, no pressure. Especially if you start drawing comparisons to, what I would think are like, some very top-notch artists or artists who are just like really adept at their craft. I guess that's the tough part of it is, you start to kind of feel some pressure to deliver just because it's like, oh, okay, well, again, it's like it's a matter of getting out of that mind state and just being like, okay, the reason why this sounds good is because I just didn't worry about comparing myself to that guy. So it's always helpful for someone describing something to their friends, but as an artist, it's something I don't really try to engage in as far as doing comparisons. But yeah, obviously it's like if you're going to describe my record to somebody and put it in like a certain frame of reference so that they actually have the interest to pick it up, then yeah, it's always a help.
newbeatmaker.com and influencepodcast.co.uk. We really like to celebrate the artists who came before us. You and I have talked on several occasions about your appreciation for one of the most slept on producers of all time. That's Prince Paul. One of the things that I love about your music is that although I can hear a Prince Paul influence or at least a like-mindedness, you are far from a Prince Paul copy. And you spend a little time sharing what makes Prince Paul or some of the things that make Prince Paul so special to you.
Prince Paul was like one of those producers that I heard early on that got me really interested in wanting to do like hip hop production and beat making, and just really start to care about the instrumental side and the production side of things. And I definitely really love records like 3 Feet High and Rising. My favorite of his though is Psychoanalysis, What Is It? And it just sounds so weird and off, but you can still dance to it, and there's still tracks that would have sounded great with rappers on them. The fact that he keeps a solid concept going throughout the whole record, and he conveys some very serious tones about psychoanalysis and mental health, but also sprinkles like so much comedy in there with some of the vocal samples and snippets and just friends of his that he brings in to do guest spots. As far as what I was trying to do with Panoramas, I don't think it was an attempt to remake that record, because that at least that was far from my mind at the time, and I actually hadn't picked up that record and listened to it for years, but still, yeah, I'd still definitively call it my favorite Prince Paul record. Hugely influenced on, I guess, this current kind of shift in direction that I'm on now, where it's a lot of the sounds that you find, and it's this whole idea of collaging and taking like old things and giving them a new context, or even like adding your own type of flavor to it. So as far as Prince Paul goes, I think his influence just throughout the whole aesthetic of hip hop and the whole approach to production highly underrated. And I think that's also the big reason why I bring up Prince Paul, is that highly underrated. I feel like when the conversation about like the great hip hop producers come up, and whether that's amongst like I guess like mainstream pop hip hop, or the more, I don't want to say underground, but I guess the more nostalgic hip hop crowd. Yeah, that's a better word for it. More people who are nostalgic for the 90s sound, or for the dusty boom bap era. I feel like when you're in both of those camps of people, and you start to have the conversation of best producers, Prince Paul is not a name that, it's one of those names I don't think comes up fast enough in that conversation. Again, another one of those guys I could ramble on about, but yeah, I'll try and keep it as brief as I can.
If I was asked for 3 projects to introduce Objects in Orbit, I would pick, purely in chronological order, iGeneration, and again, I'm pretty sure I wrote about that for B-Boy Tech Report, for its cohesive exploration of diverse subject matter and the diversity of the musical styling. Gargantuan, again, I'm pretty sure I wrote about that for B-Boy Tech Report, as well as the new beatmaker.com. That's Gargantuan. That's for the added bonus of your own and guest vocals on that project. And of course, I would say Panorama's your latest, your most focused, your funkiest project. It also has a standard of mixing and mastering that takes it up another notch. What would you say?
Yeah, so for anyone who's just finding out or listening to my music for the first time, I would definitely just suggest this new project, Panoramas. Basically, the title means trying to just cover a lot of ground in terms of the narrative subject matter and the musical stylings. Just trying to do everything from like hip hop to rock to, I don't even know what to say, like maybe West African type grooves, like 50s jazz, just the whole thing. Like, now that I'm going over it, I'm kind of forgetting some of the influences that went into it, but I mean, yeah, it's the most polished, it sounds the best. So I would just have to say Panoramas, because it's definitely a best foot forward type of project.
Objects in Orbit, thank you again for all your time, and congratulations on releasing such an amazing project. The name of the project is Panoramas, and you can go and enjoy that, buy, support, etc., stream, download, become obsessed with, from over at objectsinorbit.bandcamp.com. Link in the description, of course. And until next time, this is Lee from thenewbeatmaker.com, influencepodcast.co.uk. Listeners, stay safe and well. Thank you very much for all your time. Bye bye.